A foggy November morning enveloped the small city of Hartsville, South Carolina, when Samantha Warren's world suddenly came crashing down. Life seemed to be going smoothly for all the residents of this quaint town, where morning newspapers lay neatly in front of homes and school buses habitually picked up children. But for Samantha's family and friends, it was a day that changed their lives forever. Samantha, a 35-year-old attorney, was noted for her punctuality and responsibility. On November 24, 2013, she left for work as usual, but never returned home. The last place Samantha was seen was her office at the corner of Pine and Maple Streets, a low-rise building always lit with warm light and filled with the muffled sounds of keyboarding. Colleagues recalled seeing her around 5 p.m. as she left the building with a bag and phone in hand. Surveillance cameras nearby recorded her walking to her car in the parking lot. Samantha's social circle was relatively narrow. She was not known for being adventurous or risk-taking. Almost every evening, Samantha visited a local fitness club, then occasionally stopped by the Lavender Garden Cafe just 2 blocks from the office, where she summarized the day over a cup of herbal tea. Determining the exact time of Samantha's disappearance became a mystery to police and investigators. Her car was not in the parking lot and her phone was not answered. The disappearance of Samantha Warren was the beginning of a deep and complicated story that will reveal all sorts of secrets and skeletons in the closets of the ordinary and seemingly quiet city of Hartsville. Samantha seemed to be living the perfect life. Young, successful, she was respected both professionally and socially. Her disappearance came as a shock to everyone who knew her. The night Samantha didn't come home, her husband, James Warren, became concerned. He noticed that her cell phone was turned off, which was not like her at all. He first tried calling her close friends and co-workers, but no one had seen or heard from Samantha since she left the office. James contacted the police, and an investigation was launched that same evening. The circumstances surrounding Samantha's disappearance were mysterious. According to her co-workers, she had left the office around 5 p.m. as usual. A building security guard confirmed that he saw her get into her car in the parking lot. Her car was later found halfway between the office and her home, on the side of the road with the door open and her keys on the seat. No signs of a fight or struggle were found, further complicating the situation. Samantha's family was originally from a small town in Kentucky. She was the only daughter in the family, and her parents, being deeply religious people, were proud of their daughter's accomplishments. Or at least it seemed that way at first glance. Upon close examination, it became clear that there was intense conflict between Samantha and her parents over her decision to move to South Carolina and build a career rather than follow the family tradition. Samantha's personal life has also not turned out to be as flawless as many thought. Although her marriage to James seemed perfect, she was secretly dating a co-worker, Charles Hastings. This information came to light when an investigation looked into her emails and messages. Their relationship, which began as a friendship, gradually grew into something more. Charles was involved in several major court cases, legally questionable, and it was unclear what Samantha's role was in the whole affair. The deeper the investigators delved into the case, the more obvious it became that Samantha's life was full of hidden sides and secrets. Behind the screen of a perfect law career and a happy family life hid a lot of conflicts, secrets, and lies. Investigators interviewed Charles Hastings. He confirmed that from time to time he and Samantha met at an out-of-town hotel. Samantha, according to Charles, didn't see the relationship as serious. She had no intention of divorcing her husband. Charles denied having anything to do with Samantha's disappearance. He had a solid alibi, and so he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. When James Warren found out that his wife was having a secret affair with another man, he was very upset about it. He felt betrayed by the person closest to him. Investigators began to wonder if James might have been involved in his wife's disappearance. What if he found out about her secret affair and decided that Samantha should be punished for her betrayal? The investigators began to look into this possibility, but they also considered other possible versions of Samantha's disappearance. Police began checking surveillance footage that might shed light on the events of the dark evening when Samantha disappeared. Unfortunately, the video from the parking lot only showed her getting into her car and driving away. She did not attend the fitness club this time. Her car could be seen on the traffic camera footage, however, the footprints cut off at the location where the car was found. It felt like someone was deliberately trying to cover their tracks. Meanwhile, James was becoming more and more concerned by the day. Not only was he losing hope that Samantha could be found alive, but he was beginning to suspect everyone around him. As it turned out, he himself had secrets of his own. During further investigation, the police found out that James had been losing heavily in poker games for the past few months and even borrowed money from dubious individuals. Could his wife's disappearance have had something to do with his debts? It had to be found out. With each passing day, the investigation became more and more convoluted. And although numerous clues and details were beginning to add up, the question of what had really happened to Samantha Warren remained unanswered. Detectives James Early and William Harris sat in a cramped office, lit only by a dim desk lamp. On the desk in front of them lay a thick stack of Samantha's phone calls and messages over the past few months. The atmosphere was tense, a foreboding sense that the mystery of Samantha's disappearance was about to unravel. James carefully turned the pages of the printout until he settled on a few messages highlighted in bright marker. "William, look at this," he pronounced, showing him the text of the message, which read, "You think no one knows your secret? You're going to pay for everything." Several more similar messages followed, each more threatening and frightening. William furrowed his eyebrows as he scrutinized the texts and asked, "Why didn't Samantha tell anyone about this? We could have prevented her disappearance." After carefully studying the printouts, the two detectives realized that the trail started here. The threatening messages were coming from an unknown number registered to a false identity. This fact only added to the mystery of the case and convinced them that Samantha was the victim of a carefully planned action. James picked up the phone and dialed the number of his informant Hank, known for his connections in criminal circles. But that call ultimately failed to uncover important information that would have helped in the investigation. Time was working against them, and every hour lost could mean they were getting farther and farther away from solving this dark mystery. William, meanwhile, began processing the information he had gathered through the criminal database, hoping to find some clue as to the identity of the sender of the threats. Questions swirled in his mind. Who could hate Samantha so much and why? The answers to these questions could bring them closer to unraveling the malicious plan that had caused Samantha to disappear. Time passed inexorably, leaving less and less chance of finding her alive. The police, realizing that every minute was worth its weight in gold, began to develop a comprehensive plan to find Samantha. They carried out patrols, especially concentrating on hard-to-reach places. Film units with trained dogs explored abandoned buildings and empty fields outside the city. Every corner, every barn or old farmhouse was subjected to close inspection. The thoroughness and pedantry of the searches ensured that no area was left untouched. The police also appealed to the media for help. Live broadcasts and press conferences were organized, during which the public was urged to come forward with any information that could help in the search for Samantha. Newspapers published missing persons notes, and television reports were accompanied by photos of Samantha and contact numbers for police. Social media was flooded with calls for help, spreading information at an incredible rate. Samantha's family did not sit idly by. They joined forces with many volunteers to post flyers with Samantha's picture on them. The flyers were everywhere, on poles, bulletin boards, storefronts, and public transportation. Sincere emotion and hope for the best shone in the eyes of family and friends as they took a small step toward bringing Samantha home with each new flyer. But unfortunately, word soon came from a local resident that dashed the family's hopes for a happy ending to the case. A phone call from a local fisherman alerted the duty officer at the police station. The man, whose voice trembled with excitement, reported that while fishing at the lake, he suddenly noticed a strange object in the water. At first he thought it was a mannequin, but on closer inspection he realized that it was not a mannequin at all, but the body of a woman. Her appearance seemed familiar to him, as if he had seen her in a recent news story. Police officers immediately went to the lake. Once there, they cordoned off the area around the lake. Upon reaching the point where a fisherman had noticed a strange object in the water, they realized they had found Samantha. Officers carefully removed the body from the water, taking care to preserve any possible evidence. The medical examiner immediately began an examination, while detectives gathered witness statements and recorded all the details of the incident. Samantha's body was sent for a thorough forensic examination to determine the exact cause of what happened to Samantha and the length of time she had been in the water. The tension in the air was felt by everyone present, for a significant breakthrough had been made in a case still shrouded in darkness. When the investigators arrived at the scene, one of them noticed that there were some indistinct tire tracks on the shore at the water's edge. After taking several photographs, they began interviewing witnesses who might have seen something suspicious. One of the fishermen, still trying to warm up with a cup of strong coffee, told investigators that a couple days ago he saw a white Chevrolet pickup truck pull up pretty close to the water. "I noticed it by the bright headlights illuminating the surface of the lake," he recounted with a tremor in his voice. "It was already dark and I was about to head home when this vehicle made me cringe." The pickup truck, according to the fisherman, was only there for a couple minutes. Then there was the rumble of the engine and it drove off at a great speed, the fisherman explained. The investigators listened carefully to his statement and exchanged wary glances. "It's not enough, but it's something," one of the detectives said quietly. He cast another glance at the tire tracks that led down to the lake and ordered the team to continue searching the shore. They realized that this pickup truck could be the key to solving the mysterious accident. Investigators began scrutinizing every possible lead and connection that could shed light on Samantha's disappearance. A white-colored pickup truck caught on CCTV cameras near the scene of her disappearance became one of the most important clues in the investigation. After a quick analysis, the police found that the owner of the car was Charles Hastings. And it was quite strange because Charles had been checked during the initial investigation and the alibi he provided for the day Samantha went missing had been verified. According to his testimony, he had been out of state for a business meeting, and witnesses and bank transactions had corroborated that. However, detectives could not ignore the fact that a car belonging to Charles had been spotted near where Samantha was found. Investigators quickly discovered that Charles's wife, Carol, was a very controlling and jealous woman. She could make jealous scenes even in front of strangers. Her jealous temper was widely known among acquaintances and friends of the family, and many have long wondered how Charles withstands such violent displays of affection on the part of his wife. Every dinner party or social gathering the couple attended was accompanied by nervousness and anticipation of possible conflict. Carol could make a whole drama out of nothing, accusing Charles of imaginary relations with other women, and often left, leaving her husband and guests puzzled. What if Carol found out about her husband's secret affair and decided to take revenge on Samantha? It's a question investigators have asked themselves many times. After all, if even in the absence of direct evidence Carol could arrange a scandal, what would she do when she learned of a real threat to their marriage? Rumors of Charles and Samantha's affair had been circulating for a long time. Colleagues at work noticed how often Charles stayed late at the office or disappeared on long business trips, and began to suspect that his interest in Samantha goes beyond the professional relationship. Investigators began to unravel the tangle of this complex story, examining the relationships of all those involved. They questioned Charles's co-workers to see if their affair had been too obvious to others. They also examined Carol's phone records to see if she knew about her husband's affair with another woman. Carol's psychological profile only strengthened their thinking. This woman was capable of many things in order to maintain her control over the situation and keep what she considered her property. The discovery of several of Carol's mysterious visits to areas of the city where Samantha lived and worked added to the suspicion. Carol had motive and the ability to act decisively. All they had to do was find out if she had actually taken active steps to eliminate her rival. It was a theory that had a right to exist, and so the investigators began to scrutinize the possible involvement of Carol Hastings in what had happened to Samantha Warren. The investigation became more and more complicated, and each new day brought more unexpected turns and discoveries, bringing the detectives closer to establishing the true culprit of this dark drama. In checking Carol's alibi, The officers discovered that in the days leading up to the Samantha incident, Carol had disappeared several times for hours at a time without informing any family members of her movements. These time periods were noteworthy, and police began carefully collecting evidence and surveillance footage from the places where Carol appeared. One important lead was a video showing Carol entering a cafe near Samantha's office just during the hours when Samantha first began receiving veiled threats on her phone. In an effort to determine whether Carol's actions were a deliberate plan to eliminate her rival, investigators looked at both Charles's and Samantha's computer and phone records. It turned out that Carol knew not only about the calls and meetings of her own husband with Samantha, but also actively followed the history of their correspondence. It became obvious that Carol controlled her husband's every move very carefully, which confirmed the investigators' assumptions about her manic jealousy. Meanwhile, the investigation revealed another odd detail. Carol was making purchases of an unusual nature, purchasing, for example, a black ski mask, gloves, duct tape, a baseball bat, and other odd items in this context. All sorts of anonymous messages and letters that Samantha had received were also scrutinized. Investigators were able to determine that most of these messages could have been written by Carol, given the distinctive trail she left on the internet. All these details slowly but surely added up to a picture of an intricate and evil character of a woman whose love and obsession with her husband drove her to extreme measures. However, the evidence was still insufficient to bring formal charges against Carol. The police hoped that new technological analyses and increased cooperation with forensic scientists would bring more specifics. They scrutinized every electronic trail Carol might have left, trying to find direct evidence of her involvement in the intimidation and harassment of Samantha. The forensics team searched the pickup truck thoroughly, checking every nook and cranny and surface, hoping to find additional evidence. They found many dark red stains that Carol had tried to destroy with cleaning products. Forensics confirmed that the dark red stains found in the pickup contained Samantha Warren's DNA. After the investigators received the lab report, Carol was arrested and taken to the police station. She looked exhausted and her hands shook nervously. The officers took turns asking her questions, drawing hypothetical scenarios, trying to find a gap in her testimony. At one point, one of the investigators, straining his voice, asked, "Carol, how do you explain the presence of Samantha Warren's DNA in your pickup truck?" To which she confusedly replied that it was all a mistake and she didn't know how it ended up in her car. The pressure mounted and investigators used good cop and evil cop tactics to get her out. They showed pictures of Samantha Warren, asked Carol about her relationship with the victim, and reminded her of all the consequences if she continued to lie. At one point, Carol couldn't take it anymore. Tears streamed down her cheeks and her hands began to shake even more. She whispered in a muffled voice, "Yes, it was me. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just trying to keep my family together." After her confession, Carol fleshed out her confession with details. She revealed that she had been following Samantha. That evening, she blocked the road with her pickup truck and forced Samantha out of the car. She bound her hands with duct tape and told her to do whatever she told her to do. Carol said that she drove Samantha to a secluded spot outside of town and told her to get out of the pickup. It was late in the evening when the first stars were beginning to appear in the sky. The place she brought Samantha to was deserted, surrounded only by tall shrubs and sparse trees. The night was dark, and only the moonlight breaking through the clouds faintly illuminated the surrounding area. Carol nervously got out of the car and felt her muscles tense with anger and tension. According to Carol, they had started fighting almost immediately. She yelled at Samantha, demanding that she stop seeing Charles. Carol was determined to defend her marriage and regain her marital happiness. She even prepared a speech full of threats and recriminations to scare Samantha into giving up Charles. But Samantha apparently didn't take her words seriously. She began to laugh and, looking Carol straight in the eye, said that Charles loved her and wanted to marry her. These words sounded like a blow to Carol's heart, making her feel like her whole world was crumbling before her eyes. According to Carol, after these words, she became furious. Her hands were shaking, but inside she felt a strength and determination she hadn't known before. She grabbed a baseball bat. She vaguely remembered what happened next because the anger clouded her mind, making all actions unclear and blurry. When she came to, Samantha was beyond help. Carol, frightened and in a state of shock, drove home, leaving Samantha in the midst of the dense thickets. But when the media frenzy began and the search for Samantha became widespread, fear of exposure forced her to return. She took Samantha to another place, and that place was the lake where Samantha was later found. She thought it was a good decision, but she was wrong. The evening shadows fell softly on the walls of the cells, filling them with a sullen calm that only emphasized the hopelessness of the situation. Carol Hastings sat on the narrow bunk of her cell, slowly digesting the harsh sentence handed down by the court: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Her thoughts dwelt slowly and heavily on the fact that the remaining years of her life would be spent behind bars. The future that had once been so bright and full of possibilities had turned into impenetrable darkness. Every breath echoed with loneliness. She had lost everything: her freedom, her home, and most importantly, her husband Charles. His decision to file for divorce a year ago had seemed a cruel betrayal to her, but now she realized it was an act of self-preservation. The hope of wedding vows and unconditional love had been shattered by the realities and callousness of circumstances. The ghostly outlines of their life together were slowly disappearing, giving way to cold reality. In prison, where every day runs according to a predetermined scenario, Carol recognized her mistakes and felt the hardships of her actions. And maybe this is the main moral of her tragic fate: the realization that every mistake has its price, sometimes exorbitantly high.